All right, we're back once again. Far Kingdoms, number 21.
Yo. 21.
So, what do you
That's
think
like-
of the session? What?
Uh,
It's blackjack.
yeah, it is. That's the legal drinking age in America.
Which is so weird, right?
Yeah, it's dumb. I don't know, it's dumb. It's sending you off the army at like 18, but you can't drink till you're 21. God. Americans. Anyway, we just had session 58 last Friday. Today's Tuesday. Would you agree that some stuff went down?
Some stuff always goes down, but yes, something very significant happened this session. Why don't you start us off?
I want to allude to the mystery here. Do you think that something that was significant becomes less significant the more it happens? Does that make sense?
I can't really give a detailed answer without actually saying what it is, and that everyone who listens knows what it is.
Hey,
So I think this conversation's a bit redundant, but it really depends on how the situation is remedied. If it can't be remedied, then yes, it is significant. If it can, then yes, it does lose a lot of significance. Which
is
happens. It happens a lot, especially when you get into the high level games, because the players have access to all this stuff.
anyway, spoiler alert: Tokal died. He died. He got fucking shanked.
Okay,
You
I
got
thought you
fucked
wanted
up.
to. I thought you wanted to allude to the mystery, and then you just do
Yeah,
a
blew it
spoiler.
wide open because you were like, "Hey, the only person to listen to this is the people who already know."
Well,
So,
I was hoping to give a more detailed answer when we got to it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. It's like something to look forward to now when we talk more about it. You know.
nobody listens to this. Why does it matter?
Anyway, the session before this, we ended off with the fight in the streets with a dragon and Lady Saria, and there was some shit going down, and then after that, it was the aftermath with the Steel Maiden coming down from the skies and fucking RKOing out of nowhere the dragon, and then there was a discussion between her and some primes, and then they come back in, you guys go for a rest, and that's where we ended it. I believe at the end of the session you had some bitter words for Ty, Snow did. And we fast forward to the morning, and I believe Storm also gave a little had a little tough
What?
had a few words to say as well to Ty.
I think Creed comes in before that though. She comes in and talks to Ty,
yes, the morning. That's right.
and they, Snow and her exchange looks, or maybe Snow just gives her a look when he's just chilling out in the tavern.
Is it like
They-
a weird? Sorry to interrupt you, but when Creed walked in, she tripped the alarm. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Is that like a weird like cock tease, like haha something's about to go down, but really it's nothing? Like, is there any point to that? Should I just been like, oh yeah, she walks in and just ignored the alarm? Like, what?
She doesn't hear the alarm, right? I'm pretty sure it's unless it's set in a way that it makes an audible sound to, a vicinity, like everyone in that vicinity can hear it.
In my assumption was that she's a prime, so she is therefore somewhat powerful. She probably already knew there was an alarm, but didn't bother like being sus about it. She just kind of walked in knowing she would trip the alarm, is what I'm saying. Was there any point in me just like making that seem like a big deal when it was really just Creed just walking in? Because like I was like, oh yeah, the alarm tripped. Everyone's like, oh shit, we gotta get up. Some stuff's going down. Tokal, do you have your armor on? And Tokal's like, I sleep in my armor. And I was like, hey, that's stupid. Was there
So
any point to the
uncomfortable.
drama?
What do you mean? No, not really. I mean, objectively, no. But it's just whatever. That stuff
just, like,
happens all the
extra
time.
flavor,
It's like
right?
when you try to, if your house has an alarm and you accidentally fumble the door, you trip the alarm, and then there's a whole big wheel, and you close the alarm.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that is it even worth going through from like a narrative standpoint? Would we rather just like save time and I would just say like, oh yeah, Creed's around. You just see her walk in and
Well,
just ignore
Maple
the whole
did-
alarm in general.
Well, Maple did set the alarms, so I think it's fine if you acknowledge that that happened. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't like a big deal. I mean, we didn't linger on it for like 5 minutes. It was just
It's just
Yeah,
extra
I
flavor
don't-
on top.
yeah. I mean, if you don't acknowledge his alarm, then what was the point of him having the alarm, right?
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
And-
yeah.
And it could have been anything. Like, we didn't know what it was. It could have been anything. And then, you know, it's just like a false alarm. You know, sometimes you have a false alarm. That's what I'm trying to say. False alarm.
Okay. Yeah, I think you were up relatively, or Snow was up relatively early, chilling in the tavern. You just kind of watch Creed walk in and walk straight to the back room, where there's a hushed discussion between Creed and Ty, and while that's happening, the rest of the party comes downstairs, and you guys are just chatting, and then Creed comes out, and she's like, yo, the ship leaves in like 2 hours, get your shit, and then she just leaves the room. And then that's when Storm walks in, and what's the word I'm looking for? I was gonna say berate, but that's not the right word.
Gives her a scolding, like a light scolding.
Scolds her a bit for her actions on the previous day, which led to some unfortunate circumstances. The party finds out that the ship is going to Baron Sivgus estate, where she has organized a meeting for the party, and so we use the 2 hours just to prep everything. Do you remember what? Did you end up getting anything from that, or were you just
No,
like chilling?
I didn't. I think some people like bought some stuff, but I
Yeah.
don't think there were any roleplay moments in that.
Yeah, there was no major things happening. It was mostly just like, hey, I want to pick up these potions. I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, there was one thing. Maple went to go get the Gem of the Warcaster, or the Ruby of the Warcaster, or something, which allows him to use his sword as a
focus?
spell focus. And during that, he wanted to identify the spell scroll, and I also forgot about the spell scroll until I was scrolling through my notes like the few days before the session.
Yep.
And this was one of the spell scrolls he found in the labyrinth of the Aboleth. Yes.
Yeah.
It was just like bundled with like 4 or 5 other scrolls, and this one was like super ancient. It was all tattered, and he couldn't identify it at that moment.
It's very convenient that he did so at that time. Like, they would have not remembered it in any other case, because
Yeah.
later on, or not later on, but he finds that it's a wish spell, one of the most powerful spells in the entire game.
Yeah, honestly, he should have like, had it identified earlier. We both just forgot about it until before the session. So it really is just a coincidence that that I reminded him he still had that, which is why
Well, D&D inventory management is one of the weakest kind of things in the game, because it's actually like, it's not like a video game where you just open a menu and you see everything that you have, and you can just, you know, mouse over to see its effects and stuff like that. In D&D, you write it down, and you have to remember where you wrote it down, and then, you know, if anything needs to be done with it, like such as identifying, then you got to remember to do that. But it's very easy not to remember, and especially on D&D Beyond, where not everything is displayed on the same screen. You know, flick through the tabs and things like that.
You tell him.
So, yeah, it's easy to forget those sort of things.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe just it's not really on the player or the DM. It's easy to forget from both sides. Just both of us just need to keep better notes about this kind of shit, I guess.
Well, I think mostly if it's in that particular player's inventory, then it's up to them to manage that, right? There's some responsibility there. But what I've been doing is I've made like a sheet in my notes where it's just items that I've got.
Yeah.
So I can just look there if I remember to see everything that I have. Because before, I used to put like some things in the D&D Beyond, and before I had D&D Beyond, I would write them in the paper, but my handwriting is terrible, so it would just blend together with all the other scribbles that are on there. And there are a lot of scribbles on my old character sheet.
Yeah.
And then I would have like I would have like little bits and pieces all over my notes. So I was just like, okay, there's like an item sheet. Everything goes in there. Anything I can remember, it goes in there.
Yeah. I mean, pen and paper did not last us long at all, did it? It lasted like maybe 5 sessions, right? Until we were just like, let's just use fucking D&D Beyond. I don't remember it lasting very long. Although,
I think it was at least a good 10 sessions, because I
10
remember
sessions?
my character sheet being particularly detailed
Oh,
with all
snap.
the stuff.
Yeah, I just don't remember because I never used I never used paper.
Think I was the final holdout for pen and paper.
Yeah, you and Rainier, I think. He loved his paper. Still, his D&D Beyond is still not updated to his current character.
Not that it needs to be.
Hey, he'll come back eventually.
Anyway, what happens next? After, so Maple buys his stuff, identifies his wish scroll. Anything else happens during that?
Not really, other than like potion shopping. Like, what do you think about just having a fucking wish scroll on hand 24/7 now?
Well, I think we have to use it soon.
Do you?
Yeah. Because Tokul is the only person who has Revivify. And he's dead.
You still have a teleport circle.
Yeah,
Well,
but is that worth the trouble getting into like the whole Maples Wizard gang, X gang?
I mean, versus using a wish scroll, that's a wish. A whole wish is a very, very, very expensive.
Well, I'll leave it to Maple. He's got the scroll. He's got the beef with the old wizards. That's his prerogative. If he wants to deal with that in the way that he chooses, then that's on him. That's on him. I don't claim responsibility, even though Snow's the party leader. No responsibility.
I mean, like, regardless of the current situation, like, do you think it would have changed anything in future encounters where you're like, why don't we just fucking use the wish scroll here to deal with all our problems, kind of thing?
Definitely. It could have been used for any number of things. I mean, basically, the wording is like, it's, in the end, it's up to DM discretion what this spell is even capable of. I mean, they give you guidelines, right? In
Yep.
case you don't want to think of any yourself. But, you know, a wish is a wish is a wish.
True, that is true.
Can be anything.
Can be any.
So yes, definitely would have been impactful later. Definitely is impactful now if we decide to use it.
Yeah, I mean, also
And-
don't forget that wizards can also learn the spell from the spell scroll once he's high enough level, and if he does choose to cast it, there is a chance of failure, where it just doesn't work because he's not high enough level.
I'm also thinking that like Radalak, because if we were to use the teleportation thingo,
Yep.
we're going to get in beef with the wizards, and then we're going to go with Radalak, and I don't know, I think we're kind of pushing our limits with him. He seemed very reluctant to revive Ryan, and I think I would only assume that he'd be even more reluctant to revive Tokul. And if this keeps happening, I mean, Ryan only died like only a couple sessions ago, I believe.
Yeah, which
was
in
only-
game was like 2 days ago or something, like a
Right.
day or two ago. Yeah.
Right, and now Tokul's dead. So the deadliness of the campaign has reached the next level, and the party is struggling to keep up.
What do you
Sooner
think
or
of
later.
that, actually?
Sooner or later,
Yeah.
there'll be a TPK.
I mean, yeah, we'll get to it when it happens. But what do you think about the current difficulty of combat? So, like in the recent sessions, is
I
it too
think-
hard, too easy?
It's hard to say. I think there was definitely during that battle that we have,
Yep.
and I think we can just skip ahead until. So basically, let's just catch up to it.
All right, all right.
Because we keep jumping to it. and
It's,
we'd like-
it's important. These things are important.
Okay, well, we can talk about the important stuff when we get to the important stuff. So basically, they
Alright,
jump on the
alright.
ship. I think they jump on Creed's ship, and lo and behold, Igmar's there, and Snow. Is it Igmar? Igmar, right? It's Igmar.
Yeah.
Igmar, right? And you know, there's this tension, this awkward tension between Storm and Igmar, and Snow and the gang tell Storm like, hey, you should talk to him and, you know, apologize properly and address this. And Storm is all reluctant and saying, you know, oh, it will cause more problems and all this other bullshit that doesn't really matter. And eventually he decides to talk to Igmar. And I think it's a very touching moment. You know, like, it's very awkward, but I think it's a touching moment for the character, and especially important for Storm's development, right? You wouldn't expect old Storm to do that, but new Storm is a changed man tiger.
Yeah, he's got muscles now.
And he's got a whole new religion, and he's, you know, went on this ascetic journey for 3 months and all this other stuff.
Yes, sir.
So,
do you think the conversation went well?
Yes, for the most part, yes, it did. Everything got resolved. Igmar even apologized, and, you know, it was clear that he reflected on how he acted during then, and he thought that wasn't the right thing. And, you know, he's addressing Storm and saying, I don't think he forgives Storm fully, but he does now understand, and I think there was some sort of compromise there, if unspoken. But yes, I think in the end, that's water under the bridge now for both of them, and we can move on. We can move on to the next step.
Yeah, so if you'd say he's rather neutral to the party now, do you think there's a chance that he will also be captaining the ship that will take you to where the Oathbreaker is?
Possible.
Just out of curiosity.
Because you will make him so.
Because fate demands it?
No, because the DM controls the entire game. So why are you asking me such a loaded question like that when you know it's true? When you know it will be true?
I mean, it probably isn't going to be true, but you know.
That means yes. Everyone, this is how you read Albert, okay? He'll ask you a loaded question, you give him an answer, and he'll say, yeah, you know, that may happen. It usually means yes, okay? It means yes. Everyone, I should write a book. I should write a book on your psychology, because I know you inside and out, okay?
Yeah? Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
You think did you know Toka was going to die this session?
No, but that was not your fault.
We'll get to that. Alright, anyway. He drops you off past the town of Karthus in front of Baron Sivgus's estate, which is this black not citadel, it's like a black little castle type structure nestled against this large mountain behind it, and it's got this big green lawn in front of it with these beautiful hedges that have been carved into like big ass animals. And Igmar's like, alright, you guys get off here and you guys do some dumbass shit. You try to do triple somersaults off the side of the ship. Toka fails.
Snow just does it because he can. The others want to copy him and be cool, but obviously they're not that dexterous.
Yeah, that was the running theme where it's just Snow just does it. don't roll for it. He just does it.
Yeah, of course. Plus 13. Of course I do it.
Yeah.
I don't just do a triple flip. I don't try to do a triple flip. I triple flip, okay?
Oh.
It's a given.
Okay. I don't know if it's a given, but you know.
It is always a given. Come on. When have I failed? I think the last time actually I properly failed an acrobatics check was when we were running from the Duke back in Guildford. And there was like this.
That was a long time ago.
There was like this wagon and that we had to jump over, and I think Snow tried to jump over, but he tripped and he fell in a bunch of mud.
God, that was so long. That was like 2 years ago, like a year and a half ago.
I think it's almost 3 years ago now.
Oh dear lord. Yeah, I don't know. Plus 13's good, but it's not like insane. Like I succeeded everything I do, no matter how easy or hard it is.
But it is though. But it is.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
After that Duke running thing, when have I failed an acrobatics check?
When have I asked you for acrobatics checks?
No, you ask quite often.
Sometimes.
I get Snow to do some acrobatic shit all the time.
Okay.
Oh, what do you think? What do you think about that? For a guy who's like very no nonsense, he does pride himself in his agility. What do you think about that?
It's the childish side of him that kind of peeks out sometimes. He pretends to be mature, but then there's a little bit that's like, hey, I want to have some fun too. Hey, let me in. kind of thing. I think it's a nice quirk about Snow's character. He's not all cold and mature. There's a bit of a boyish side to him.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. Do you agree?
I agree.
Okay. Anyway, he's gonna fail an acrobatics roll sooner or later. I'll just keep fucking asking, like, hey, you want to take 10 steps forward?
Hey,
Yeah.
you keep up. You want to take 10 steps forward? What kind of 10 steps am I doing? Like a triple front flip every time I make a step? Like those gymnasts, like they run by flipping? Is that what you're gonna try and make me do?
You want to do this super mundane task? Yeah, you roll acrobatics. I don't know, maybe one day we'll get a fail. Also, I forgot to mention this. I was supposed to talk to it like after the session, but there's some mechanics regarding hiding mid-battle to get a stealth attack.
Yes.
To get the unseen attacker advantage. It actually doesn't work after the first one. Like, you don't get advantage on the attack, because as soon as you pop out to attack, you are technically seen by the attackee, the victim. I don't know. It's like this weird rules of wooden thing. We have to talk about this at length at some point. But anyway, we'll get back to that later.
Is it like if you try to hide in the same spot, it doesn't work? So if I try to hide in multiple spots, it may work.
It's kind of like they are already, like, once you do your first attack, they are aware of your presence. So regardless of future times you try to hide, they still know you're around, and therefore you don't get the unseen attacker advantage, kind of thing.
Okay.
But we'll talk about it. Anyway, he drops you off, and you are led to the front of this large obsidian manor, and awaiting you at the front, dusting the front doors, these big obsidian double doors, is this man dressed in this kind of like a jade green robe, and he's got this green orb just kind of hanging off him, glowing in this viridescent light. And there's a lot of curiosity going on about it. Like, Maple attempts to use detect magic to kind of figure out what the fuck is going on with the orb, and he finds that there is a scent or a whiff of transmutation magic coming off of it, and he surmises that once the orb is taking off this man's body, he's going to transform or something of the sort. We'll get to that later. He kind of talks to you guys. He's like, yeah, actually, the Baron isn't here. You guys are welcome to chill for a bit. There's some rooms in the back. I'll take you there, but I don't really like you guys that much, is the general vibe he was giving off. And so he kind of walks you in, and he walks you into this foyer, or foyer if you're British, and there's this big ass portrait of these men dressed in like lamellar armor, and they have like these weird glaive spears of foreign culture. Like, the party's never seen something of this type before. They're from it's pretty clear they're from this exotic foreign continent. What did you think about that?
Well, I thought you were just describing like feudal Japanese armor, because that's
it was pretty similar
on the dot.
I was thinking
was that
more
on
like
purpose?
Chinese Mongolian type, which is very similar.
Yeah. No, I got that.
Yeah, it was very Asian inspired. It's more just allusion to a wider world out there, and how Baron Civius is perhaps not native to this continent, and he what's the word, embellishes his home with stuff that you wouldn't find anywhere else, really.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a hint for later on. Wink, wink. Anyway,
you're gonna travel to the next continent. You're gonna have to write more stuff.
Yeah, we'll talk
a lot of stuff.
We'll talk about things when they happen, if they happen. Sometimes stuff doesn't happen, and we can move on. Sometimes it does, and stuff happens. Anyway,
okay.
He leads into what's obviously this massive puzzle room. And I clearly remember, I think it might have been you, where you were like, hey, isn't this just like a riddle room, like a puzzle room we're walking into right now?
Yeah. I mean, it was obvious. You were like, there's 3 gargoyles, and they're holding their hands out, and they have 3 colors, and the man at the door had a green orb, and the gargoyle has, you know, he looks like he's supposed to be holding a ball-shaped item, and he's also green. And then there's two other rooms. There's like this blue room with this shade with a blue orb, and then there's this other room with this thing with the red orb. You know, come on, can't get more obvious than that.
Yeah, and yet you still did it.
Yes, I think so. This is the thing, right? Snow kind of knew something was up, and the guy was the manservant was like, "You guys can do whatever you like. Just wait here."
Yeah, whatever you like.
Logic says you should just wait. You know, you can't just go screwing around with the guys' things, even if they say you can. It's just not polite. So most of the party, except Snow, goes ahead and tries to fuck with everything and see if they can solve the puddle, which they do. Spoiler, they do.
I mean, you do help them at some points.
Yes, because I think it was okay. So this is the thing I have conflict with, right?
Sure.
So, as a player and playing Snow, if I wasn't worried about blocking all the other players' fun for this puzzle, I would not have let them do this puzzle. The only reason why I was reluctant to do that because everyone else wanted to do it, so I didn't want to tell everyone no, right?
Okay.
But I think there's a conflict there because Snow's supposed to be a party leader. He's supposed to have some sort of authority. And I think the power balance in the party is not that different. Like, even though Snow's the party leader and he makes some of the decisions, most of the decisions are made democratically, should I say.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I felt like definitely if I didn't have to worry about the actual like gameplay meta aspect of that, I would have said no, we're not doing this because it smells fishy.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
That's fair. Yeah, I obviously see where you're coming from here. And there's obviously the whole, well, the DM's putting it in front of me, we should be doing. It's just like common courtesy as a player to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even when it's, you know, like sometimes glaringly obvious that you should or should not be doing something. It just kind of feeds into, because I already knew, like, I don't know, I knew consciously that the players, hell no, even the characters would take up the opportunity to just kind of solve the riddle. Because I was just thinking about the characters and I was like, yeah, most of them would actually probably just kind of do this. And I kind of see where you're coming from, but also, if it was that big of a deal, I think you would have actually like brought it up more seriously at the time.
The thing is, I did see it as a big deal, but then again, it's that meta thing where like I don't want to block the players' fun and like have them be a bit sour because, you know, one player didn't allow them to do all this stuff, right? And I think a very long time ago, I learnt to not block as a player.
Yeah.
Like you should never try to block another player. And I don't know if there's like a line to that or you should just never do it because then it's complicated. It's complicated to me, but I did think it was a big issue because we just walked into this supposed Lich's house, and there's this puzzle there, and it seems too obvious. But again, I'm thinking outside the character, which kind of affected the decision making. But if I had the final say, I would have said no. Like if I wasn't worrying about the player stuff, I would have definitely said we should not do this. This is the trap.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with you that it's you as a player. I think Snow would, as a character, would also be like, hey, no, no, this is fucked up. And I think that just kind of goes back to what players expect from the campaign itself. Like if it was like a super serious kind of dark Tony vibe, none of the players would be like, this is a good idea. But I think, I don't know, I'm not sure if recently or it's just the vibe in general where things are a little more easygoing. And maybe we need to talk to about this as a party um, where things are serious or aren't serious. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think it's something that you can like flick a switch on and say like, hey, everyone gather around, you know, does everyone want a serious campaign? And then boom, all of a sudden the campaign's full serious, because sooner or later there's going to be some shenanigans, because nobody wants to play like an ultra serious campaign 100% of the time.
Yeah, I just don't think
So
it's that kind of party.
the conversation will just go round and round. It'll always be, it's mostly serious, but then there are shenanigans. So I don't think it's as simple as, hey, let's have a talk about it or whatever. I think if the party was in disagreement with how the campaign is going, like everyone kind of says, I don't really like the tone of this campaign, then yes, some major reforms can happen then. But at this point in time, I think all the players are quite satisfied with, and I'm not saying, I'm not trying to speak for them, but I from my assumption and from what I can see, everyone seems to be having fun with the tonal nature of the campaign as it is now.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Do you think, from a player character's perspective, that the characters themselves would have willingly done the puzzle, like Tokal, Storm, and Maple, and all that?
I think yes. I think Storm was the only one, and I think this is just particular to like Storm's, reformation as a character. He is delegating a lot of the authority to Snow, which I appreciate. But I think in the end, yes, most of them would have done this. Maybe Ryan, like, I actually don't know. Ryan seems to change quite a bit. Like, he goes from a serious character, then like he went from like a more like nice character, and a bit more goofy. So it's hard. I have a hard time gauging where Ryan is at. I think Ryan is more like easygoing and a bit more like Storm, I want to say. And Tokal kind of fits that vein as well. Tokal is this kind of happy-go-lucky guy, goes with the flow. If most people are doing it, he'll do it too. And Maple is kind of hard to gauge for me. I don't know if like Lachlan wants to take him in a way where he's super serious. It doesn't really seem like that, though. Maple is a bit more serious than the other characters. The most serious character is obviously Snow the Edgelord, but I don't know. I think majority of the party would have done it.
Okay.
Or would have tried to do it. I don't know.
I think that's something as a DM that I can also kind of influence pretty dramatically. Like if I were to say something like there's like these cold eye, like the whole place has this haunting atmosphere to it, then the players would probably be less inclined to actually interact with the puzzles, or like there's these grim eyes kind of watching you from a distance. You can kind of like feel them on your back, kind of thing. That would kind of usher you guys away from interaction with the puzzle. I think just from context clues that I was kind of encouraging the puzzle interaction as a DM. Did you kind of pick that up?
Obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of just ushered us in there. The guy said, do whatever you want. There's clearly a puzzle going on.
I mean, you guys can just be like, no, we're going to wait here and be stubborn. And I had a plan for that too. So, honestly, you guys could have done whatever.
Would have it ended in a fight either way?
I can't say that. I cannot say that.
I knew you were going to say that. But anyway, that's fine.
I mean, yeah, of course I'm going to say that. Because, back in the day, I used to be like, this X would have happened, or if you went down left path, Y would have happened. And that took out a lot of the immersion from you guys. And I strive to keep that in balance, in check these days much more. It's a conscious effort to not talk about the stuff I've written, even though I'm very excited about a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's something you got to do as a DM. I think.
No, I get that. No, I was just saying to myself, why did I ask that? Because I know exactly what he's going to say. I just realized that after I asked it.
Yeah.
Because it was just like reflex, and then I realized, no, that's fine. So we do the puzzle. I think not entirely in the way that you expected, at least for the green orb guy. The other two seem pretty like along the rails, but the green orb guy, we kind of like tricked him into like, because he's like this clean freak character, and if there's even a speck of dust anywhere, he kind of freaks out and tries to remedy it as fast as he can. And we kind of tricked him to kind of start cleaning around the green gargoyle, and then we basically force his big orb necklace down into the holder with him still attached to it. And I think, just based on what you alluded to earlier in the podcast and earlier in that session, that, you know, trying to take it from that guy would have caused some sort of effect. Maybe he like turns into this were being or something like that, or transforms into something, or maybe he was disguised, alter self disguise, and that was the trigger to dispel the illusion or the spell, something like that. And then like there would be like a little mini fight or something. I don't know.
And now you will never know.
Not that guys, it really matters, man, but we got the puzzle.
The pride in your guys' eyes when you came out of that flip with that plan, I was like, fuck. I was everyone was so happy with themselves. And I was like, alright, yeah, fuck it, you got me. You guys.
I mean, I think one of the like the high moments as a player is like tricking the DM at his own game. Like you never expected this to happen, now did ya? In your face, that sort of thing.
It was great. I did not expect that at all. A lot of this stuff, a lot of stuff surrounding Mr. Green Man, whose name I can't even remember. I don't think he even told you his did not go as I planned at all. So that was interesting to say the least. So the blue room with the library and the shade had this puzzle to it, where I believe the riddle goes something along the lines of, once spoken, I am broken. And Aiden, Ryan specifically, was like, oh yeah, this is old Ubanian riddle, where the answer is silence. And I was like, oh, I guess they know the answer. And you kind of finangled with that for a bit. And I tried to allude to it at the start when you guys entered the room, that there's all these loud distractions going on. There's the hourglass, there's the pipe with the water that's dropping into the bucket, there's like the windows rustling all the time. Eventually you guys pick up on it, that you have to silence the whole room, and that kind of shakes free the orb from the blue spirit's head, which you deftly, acrobatically jump from bookshelf to bookshelf and clasp it in your hands. What did you think of that whole riddle / puzzle situation in general? Was that like oh, this is kind of neat kind of thing, or was it just like, yeah, it's, you know, just another room kind of thing?
I think it all depends on personal preference. I think it kind of took me out a little bit. Like, it was clearly just like a puzzle room, and like the library didn't really serve any other purpose. And I'm talking like a gameplay perspective, other than to be a puzzle room. In fact, that whole puzzle was kind of like out of nowhere, and I thought, oh well, okay, this is here now. So, and the players ate it up. This is just my opinion, but yeah, I think the puzzle was like kind of cool, but it does have that same vibe of like many of the other puzzles that you've done, like the some of the puzzles that we did in the Coroquine and that sort of thing. And I'm not saying that the puzzles themselves were bad. That, you know, they're pretty creative, and I think, and I have to commend you on that. I probably, but I'm not a puzzle guy. I'm not a puzzle guy. That's all. I'm too dumb for puzzles. So I don't tend to enjoy them because I suck at them. That's all. Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Hey, goddamn. Hey, I'm just talking to myself here.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't really finish your point there. Like, so what was wrong with it? It was it too gamey? Was it too immersion breaking? Like,
yeah, I guess you can say it's a little bit of column A, column B. It did feel like okay, this is definitely like a puzzle you'd see in like a game, especially one that like an older RPG when they used to do like actual puzzles you had to think about. And yeah, and for me it was a little bit immersion breaking because of that aspect, that more gamey aspect. And but that's my general opinion on all kinds of puzzles, especially blatantly obvious ones like that. Like it kind of reminds me of the quote unquote puzzles you'd find in Skyrim, where you just like match the tiles with whatever's on the wall and then the dungeon opens. There's really no not logical sense for the puzzle to be there. And I mean, in this case, maybe it does because he's a lich and he can like terraform his house or whatever. But in real life, you won't ever see a puzzle like that. Puzzles like that didn't exist in real life. Like maybe in some smaller scale forms or like on a lockbox or something like that. But in like such a scale, like a whole room serves a purpose as part of the puzzle. Nobody does that. But that's just me. That's just me. And D&D is at the end of the day a game where you play with friends and you have fun, and sometimes you solve a puzzle. That's fine. That's okay. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just the kind of person who doesn't like that as much as other people. That's all.
Okay. I'll let you know now that I very intentionally made that feel like it was very on the nose, especially with the Red Room as well, which is quote unquote a puzzle too, where solutions were glaringly kind of gamey in their own sense, like it's a test of some sort. And I definitely kind of see where you're coming from, especially with the Korokeen puzzles, where if I recall correctly, there was the room where you guys had these stipulations cast on you, where you can only say or do certain things. You had to kind of figure out what the other person, what was wrong with the other person, and that to my own fault that it didn't kind of stand out as kind of in-game makes sense, because if I recall correctly about that dungeon in particular, I believe the whole point was to train teamwork teams or some shit. I don't even remember. And because I had like the sore hands, like maybe that wasn't explained that too well. So
I don't know if you even try to justify the puzzle in the in-game, I feel like that makes it even worse. Yeah.
So you would prefer puzzles that aren't exactly puzzles, more just like there's like this long bridge that's kind of shifting in place, and it looks like as soon as one person steps on it, it's gonna crumble. That kind of puzzle, where it's more just like an obstacle rather than a riddle or game puzzle or any sort.
I would even refrain from even calling it a puzzle. Like there are problems in the world, and it's not really obvious what the solution is. And that's just like in real life. You have political problems. You know, these people need to be fed, but you also got to fund your army and that sort of thing. There's no easy answer to that. But I mean, I think that kind of is straying too far away from what we're talking about here. But all I'm saying is, and I don't really like, what should I say? I'm kind of like getting my thoughts mixed up now. I don't particularly like puzzles, like especially gaming ones like that. That's all. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not saying I have a preference. I'm not saying get rid of them. It's just that's me. That's just me. And I know the players like doing them because you can just clearly tell they like doing the puzzle. They like solving something, getting something right. Who doesn't like doing that? It's just my personal preference.
Hey, players, put your opinions in the comment section below. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think about puzzles. Did you like the red puzzle? Did you like the blue puzzle? Which puzzle did you prefer? Anyway, the blue puzzle was that. The red room, the crimson room with the big mural on the wall with the warriors on the hill who've all been kind of killed or maimed in certain ways, and the spirits kind of sit on the side on the bench in these particular poses, and they have the shards of the crystal kind of chilling in their heart section. Maple and Ryan kind of solve that quite easily amongst themselves. I will say that this is inside view on DM, that room was actually going to be a combat room where you guys had to like literally fight the red spirits, But then I looked at the time and I was like, hold up. we run out of time to get through like the next 2 combats that are gonna happen. So it just kind of slitters. You just kind of insert X into Red Spirit's body to get the shard from them, which was like a nice, simple, oh yeah, it's kind of understandable kind of thing. I thought it was fine. I don't know. Would you prefer that kind of thing compared to the Blue Room, where it's more just like context clues and less literal? Here's a riddle for you, please solve it kind of thing.
I mean, it's sort of in the same vein, just a different form.
Okay. Because
I mean, they solved it by like doing their attacks corresponding to like how they were killed, right? That's how it went, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so it's the same thing but a different coat of paint.
Okay, just another puzzle. Okay,
it's just another puzzle. To me, anyway. Okay. And it's the thing. If you want D&D to be about puzzles, and people do want that, and DMs want to run games that are like just puzzles. Actually, I remember listening to a podcast, and I think this actress called Deborah Ann Wall likes to run games where it's just entirely puzzles. And like I remember even saying, like I remember like being kind of annoyed at her because she said at one point, it's just like, yeah, you guys can make your character and your backstory, but like you got to remember your backstory. It's that I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna put you in a dungeon and you'll just do puzzles. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a horrible D&D game. There's no character, like no characters' backstories don't matter. That's not the kind of game that I would want to play. But people want to play that kind of game, and that's fine. People want to play like the combat simulators or like XCOM simulators where you do all this tactic stuff. But I don't want to do that. I want to do like actual role playing where role playing matters. You can only do so much in a video game and select the dialogue options, but like this is just a different level of that, and I want to try and explore more of that. Because this is the only avenue that I really can explore that in.
Do you think this campaign is kind of achieving that goal or going down that path? Or would you prefer more focus on the role-playing aspect?
And I don't want a single voice to influence how you like change the course of the campaign.
It's not. Don't worry.
But yes, I one of my favorite moments during that little puzzle thing was when Storm was like, "Oh, me and Snow just start talking like absentmindedly as we look through our books." That was like my favorite moment because it was just like we're just having a chat and we're just talking, and you just kind of get to explore the characters a little bit, get their opinions on stuff. Whereas the other, that was like the highlight of that little part, even though it was like almost meant nothing. It was very insignificant compared to everything else that happened in the camp. I enjoyed that part the most. I was like, oh, I wish there were more times where characters, just spoke and like talked like human beings or, the equivalent mortal beings. And like another moment that I liked was when Ryan and Tokul were talking out on their hunt. There's no real reason they should be talking because they're trying to hunt and be stealthy, but they're talking. They're talking about like what happened, and they're trying to reconcile their thoughts, and they're trying to see what other people think and that sort of thing. And that sort of thing interests me because you're exploring more of like the conflict in people's hearts and their minds. And I feel like sometimes in D&D, that sort of stuff just gets kind of the smoke covered over with all the other stuff. Like you have combat, and then there's things happening, and then this person comes in, and there's another's, we have to go shopping and that sort of thing. But yeah, I do prefer more of like those casual moments, even when people are just talking to like NPCs in the city. And I know that does take up a lot of time, and nowadays we tend to skip over like the more menial stuff that players tend to do when they buy potions or they buy scrolls or whatever. But that's just what I enjoy. That's what I like getting out of D&D.
Okay. Other players, let us know in the comments if you agree or disagree with Kevin, and what kind of gameplay you want from this campaign.
And I think that is actually something players should comment that. Like not just out of like the desperation of our lack of viewers, but you know, if you want something particular out of the campaign, just speak up. Maybe it'll make you enjoy the campaign more. I'm just saying what I feel. That might not be how you feel.
Yeah, if you tell me you're unsatisfied with something or you want more of something, there is a very very high percentage chance that you will get that in the coming sessions. I don't know, maybe we just need to run another session 0.3, or 0 version 3, where we talk about what we expect it now, again, now that we've all kind of settled into the groove of things, like where we want the campaign to go in regards to thematic themes, or whether it's more combat centric or roleplay centric or exploration centric. Maybe that is something we should actually look into. Maybe next session we'll start with that and we'll talk about it a little bit, and I'll write some stuff down, and the session after that we'll introduce those changes. It's a good idea, actually.
I think specifically with my point, I think it's more on the players to be a bit more proactive. And I can't make them do anything. And I can't make them remember to do stuff like that. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because that's kind of out of my control. You know?
Yeah. So would you say like the conversation between Snow and Igmar was one of the highlights of that session then?
Snow and Igmar? I didn't talk to Igmar.
Storm and Igmar. Fuck. God damn, your names are so close. Storm and Igmar.
I did like that, yeah. I think that was another highlight as well. Because, like, you know, it was about Storm's character. That's what the scene was about, and it was about like reconciling this relationship that went awry.
Okay.
It marks character development, and I like that.
All right. I see you. Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I enjoy that aspect as well. Half of it is because I can just kind of sit back and watch. And the other half is just like, oh, sick. We're getting some actual character development, and I kind of know where this can kind of steer our future sessions, or what I could kind of put in front of you guys that tests that character development to the limits or whatnot.
Yeah, I'm thinking now maybe like, even though you can't really make the players do anything, but maybe you could possibly like frame the situation in a way that encourages that sort of interaction. Like, let's say for example, like you're digging a hole, right? And there's two characters digging a hole, and you say, you know, you guys will be here for a little while. Feel free to like chat or something like that. And if they don't want to chat, just skip over it. Switch to another character, or just say, okay, after a little while, digging's done. That sort of thing. So, I mean, because I know there is a balance. Like I feel like if you try to force a little moment like that every single time, it gets tiresome because people don't always have things to say. And I understand that. And I think part of the magic of those tiny little moments is because they just happen without any sort of planning or any sort of framing. It's the spontaneity of it is sort of part of the magic.
I agree.
And
I agree to a certain extent, is what I'm going to say, because I've noticed recently, maybe in the past like 10-ish sessions, where a lot of that stuff actually kind of happens, and a lot of the time it's between two characters just kind of talking to each other, and there's this feeling, or there's this wailing inside of me where I'm like, okay, these two are talking, and then I kind of look to like the other three players, and I'm just like, oh shit, they're not doing anything right now, and like, I don't know if they're not enthralled with the other two characters talking to each other, or if they're not paying attention, or if they don't like it or not. But I do notice they kind of lose focus sometimes when it's just two players interacting with each other. So I definitely kind of try to speed it up sometimes, just to keep everyone else within the loop. I don't know. It just kind of depends on like what they enjoy. Some people just don't enjoy two people talking to each other in character. Like,
no, I get that.
Unless it's them, obviously.
I get that. That's a bit selfish, but yes, I get that, and that really depends on like how. And I think I've spoken about this like a number of times before. It does depend on a number of factors, and it's just one of those things that you can't really just put a solution on, and you know, it's better, because yes, sometimes the conversations go on for a long time. Some people check out and that sort of thing. Some people just don't enjoy RPing as much as I do. You know, that's fine. Other people can be as different as they want to be. So yeah, I definitely think this is not an. I don't know if it's even like a problem. I didn't frame it like that, right? It's just something that I enjoy.
You want to see more of, yeah. You enjoy, and you maybe want to see more of.
Yeah, I mean, but if making more of those moments happen comes to the detriment of like the rest of the campaign, then no, maybe that's not a good idea to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's definitely why we need a discussion, another session 0, version 3, on what we expect and stuff moving forward. Because I enjoy those moments sometimes. Most of the time I enjoy them. Other times I'm just like, we gotta move on. There's shit that needs to happen. And there's a certain sense of progress that I feel is perhaps maybe necessary is not the right word, but I kind of want from each session, where I don't want you guys to feel like nothing is happening. Like at the end of the session, well, we didn't really achieve anything, or nothing, or like only like a day passed or something like that. At least that's what I feel. I don't like that feeling of, I don't know, like stagnation. Do you feel that sometimes?
Yeah, there are sessions like there are some sessions where it feels like it was moving very slowly, but it again, it depends on a lot of things. If I feel like the things that happened were meaningful and didn't necessarily progress the story or the timeline in any sort of way, I think that's a good session to me. But if it felt like we were just sort of doing stuff, and I think Aiden said something like, especially things like, there are some conversations where he got frustrated with, like the one where we were discussing like the party name or something like that. He wasn't particularly a fan of that one because it just kind of went nowhere, and then we ended up circling back to an earlier name that we went into. I don't know if that's necessarily a fair criticism. It's not like, oh, Blood Brothers, we're gonna settle on that, you know, as soon as possible. We just like, we're working through the names. But I do agree that it was kind of like an inane conversation that we were having, and it kind of dragged along. I agree with that. That's fine. So I don't know. It's complicated. It's very complicated.
Yeah, and it changes depending on who's talking about it. I don't recall correctly, but did that Blood Brothers conversation, the naming conversation, did that happen in character or out of character?
Pretty sure. I think it was like a bit of both. I think most of it happened in character, but I think I remember there was definitely at some points we were just discussing it as players.
Do you think it would have been more interesting if you was in character the whole time? Like,
well, we discussed it mostly in character, and it still kind of dragged on. And I'm not saying every roleplay moment is like enjoyable, because sometimes it's just like, okay, what's the point that we're trying to get to here? Or like, there's sometimes like I even get annoyed. Like there's conversations that clearly like, you know, this would all be solved if you just said this one thing, right? You're kind of bumbling around the subject matter, trying to get to it in a diplomatic way. You just say that thing, or like get to your point so they can address it, and then we can move on. There are conversations like that. I agree with that. There are conversations where it's just like, oh my god, what the fuck are you guys talking about? What are you trying to say? What is this conversation about?
That's true. That happens sometimes.
It does happen. So yeah, it is a very fine line, and it's not an easy thing to improve on, I guess.
Yeah, it just definitely warrants discussion between everyone to get to the crux of the issue and find out a solution that kind of benefits everyone. Yeah, I guess we'll get back to that in like an actual session where we can all chat about it.
Yeah.
Puzzle, you guys put in the crystal orbs into the gargoyles' hands, and these sarcophagi in the middle start to kind of, what's the word? I was gonna say de-escalate again. Lower themselves into the ground.
They descend.
That's the word. and they create this kind of like this pit, this bowl, if you will, of stairs that kind of go down into the ground, which is pretty much difficult terrain. Just difficult terrain that goes down, and these three mummies wrapped in bandages kind of step out of the sarcophagi. One just kind of pummels his hand through the door to his sarcophagi. The others just kind of slide off, and one pulls out a bow, the other one pulls out like a great sword, the other one's trying to cast magic, and then combat kind of starts, and there's this kind of I'm not sure if puzzle is the right word. Actually, puzzle is the right word, where you pull the lever, the light changes color, and it makes one of them vulnerable or susceptible to taking damage is probably a better word. Vulnerable being a mechanic, which I accidentally used and confused some people. And like, if you had the red light, the red light on, the red mummy would be able to take damage, or if you had the blue light on, the blue would take damage, etc. And that was an interesting, if not rather easy combat. Once you guys figure out the general mechanics, things kind of progress real smoothly. What do you think of the new combat system we're implementing with the 60 seconds of planning and then you just kind of go kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's good. Everyone gets on the same page. I do think, like, there was one point where Aiden or Lewis were saying, like, they were briefly like talking about some strategy stuff, like during someone's turn, and you were like, combat strategy time's over, and I thought that was a bit restrictive that happened, because stuff changes on the board all the time, and sometimes the strategy that you start with at the start of the turn may not work for something that's changed now.
Okay.
And do you remember that? Do you remember saying that?
I do remember saying that. It was during, I forgot whose turn it was, but they were also talking to the person who was taking their turn.
Yeah.
So that person wasn't doing anything. They were just kind of also discussing. I disagree with you that it kind of restricts it. I think that's the whole point, right? Where you need to adapt to the changing situation, and you can't just communicate with the party about what to do. Like that's the whole point of it. At least that was my understanding of it. What do you think of that?
No, I think my understanding was it was to save time, and I think for the most part it has done that.
No,
but I think
hasn't.
You don't think so?
No, I disagree entirely. Nothing has changed with time.
No, I did feel like that at least the first phase of the fight went fairly, like, more quickly than I usually think combat goes for. At least the first phase, but then there was the second phase, which was a bit longer. There was more, like, there was gargoyles, and then they had the big guy, and he had legendary turns, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that just goes back to, like, what I said before, that D&D, that is the way D&D is designed. It's designed, and I don't think, like, we can change it, we can try and speed it up with, like, these little things, but, you know, in the end, we're cutting minutes off instead of whole hours or stuff, which I think we were trying to achieve in the first place. Like, we're trying to make it significantly shorter so it wouldn't take up most of the session. But that's by design, and I don't know what we can do. I don't know what we can do about it other than, like, change the system, you know?
Yeah, I don't think there is much you can do about it. I don't know. It's not like I'm not a fan of the new approach we're taking. And I guess maybe in some aspects it does speed up combat, but for the most part, it was just kind of the same thing, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was like 2/3 of the entire session, I think, was just that combat session.
Okay. You guys deal with the first phase pretty easily, I'd say. Tokul rushes down. He starts a melee with the big great sword guy. You guys decide which ones to focus fire first. That was nice to see. There's some strategy going on. And you deal with greatsword guy, then you deal with, I think, magic guy next, and then the bow guy after. The magic guy got fucking cucked, like, continuously.
Yeah.
He had 3 turns, I think, and each turn he was counterspelled, and I was just like, oh, so that's how that feels, huh? And on the outside, I was like, oh, you guys got me. And then on the inside, I was like, God, you guys need to stop wasting your counter spells on this dude. Oh God. And then you guys deal with that, and then finally the large sarcophagus in the middle opens up. The levels, the height increases. Oh God, what am I saying? The room changes again.
That was another thing. Like, I was trying to imagine the room, and I think you described it was kind of like a dip. It was like a concave room with stairs leading down, and then the second phase, the middle part goes up. So it was like a little hill in the middle.
Yeah,
that's how I imagined it.
Yeah,
but everyone kept saying different stuff, so I was confused. Like, is there a hill, or did the whole floor raise so it's level, or is does the roof come down now, or I was had all these things changing in my mind, so I wasn't entirely sure. Not that it mattered that much during the fight. It was I was having a real hard time imagining what the heck was going on in that room.
Oh, for me, it just went from a bowl to a hill. Maybe I should have explained that.
That is how I imagined it, but I wasn't solid on that.
Okay.
I wasn't solid on that.
The Mummy Lord steps out, and he has a few gripes with your party, and the gargoyle statues turn into actual living gargoyles, which flick the switches so that you cannot easily damage the Cyan Mummy Lord, which was actually quite fragile looking back at its health and AC. So that added an extra layer of difficulty to the fight. Do you think the extra layer of difficulty was just kind of on top, or was it added a strategical aspect to it that kind of made the fight, I don't know, more enjoyable or less enjoyable, or what do you think?
There's definitely more engagement in the battle when you have that strategical layer. So yes, it does tick that box. It does add another layer to think about, and I think yes, that does make it a bit more engaging. But, and this is me, a guy who doesn't really like combat just for the length. It gets overshadowed by how long combat makes, and in the end, it's length. It's always length for me. It takes so long to get through combat that all the innovations that you put into it, like the puzzle stuff, which I thought was actually pretty good, for the combat stuff, it just kind of overshadows it, because you're in that battle for 3 hours real time, and then just trying to kill this guy, and then flicking the switches. Okay, that you flick the switch. Okay, that's done. Then you're back to shooting the guy, and it's just doing that. It just gets really repetitive. But that's just me. I don't like combat. I've said this before. I don't like combat in D&D 5e because it just takes way too long.
Yeah, I agree with that. Players in the comments, let us know if you if you think combat is way too fucking long, and how do we fix it? And we'll talk about that actually in person. Anyway, so Tokul was pretty much directly next to the Mummy Lord when he spawned out of his sarcophagus, and so there's this kind of distaste that I imagine Mummy Lords have for all things that are paladin-like or cleric-like in nature, where it's just this general hostility they kind of vibe against the paladins. So there's this obvious, you know what, I'm gonna attack Tokul, says the Mummy Lord. And the Mummy Lord, he rolls disgustingly high for every single one of his attacks. I don't think he missed once. He rolled 18s, 19s, and he does a lot of damage when he hits you once. And I believe it was, if he hits you, I think I'm allowed to say this now, where if he hits, it's 3d6 physical damage, and then 66 necrotic damage.
Mm-hmm.
And I even, actually no, I won't mention that, but it's a lot of damage, and Tokul starts to kind of take a beating. So he's like, oh shit, I gotta get out of here. I'm gonna go downstairs and help out with the gargoyles and shit. And while everyone's trying to deal with their own thing and try to combat the gargoyles and flick the switches back to make the Mummy Lord vulnerable, the Mummy Lord uses its legendary actions to kind of turn into the sandstorm, move down, and just fucking chase Tokul to the ends of the earth. and Tokul is he gets hit with harm, which is like 60. Which took like 60 damage. But the thing with harm is that it doesn't actually kill anybody; it just reduces their health to 1, and it reduces their max health by that amount as well, by the amount of damage it does. And so Tokul's on his last fucking legs, and he gets knocked unconscious. And everyone's still scrambling to kind of get rid of the gargoyles at this point, which were rather fragile. I think they had like 35 health max. Their AC wasn't that high, and their damage was like 2d6 or 3d6 per hit. And they weren't like a damaging threat. They're just more of just kind of an obstacle you had to deal with in order to get rid of the big guy who was fucking you up. Eventually Tokul goes down, and there was this moment when Tokul goes down, and it kind of rolls back to the mummy. It doesn't roll back to the mummy lord's turn. I just look at how many legendary actions he has left in that round, and I realize he's got, I think, 1 or 2 more, and to attack just costs 1. I was like, if I were a mummy lord and I hated all living things, and I especially hated paladins, would I try to go and kill the other people who are just kind of laying around, or B, finish off the guy in front of me so that he can't come back and fuck me in the ass? And I'm pretty sure you could physically see me let out this sigh where I was like, oh shit, I gotta kill Tokul. Like, I can't stop myself. This is just something that the Mummy Lord would do. He would try and kill Tokul right now, unless given like a better reason. And so I use my legendary actions to hit him once, and he goes, I think he comes up and then he goes down again. Is that right? I'm trying to remember this properly.
Yes, I think you're right. I think Storm casts Mass Healing Word.
That's right.
And he comes up with like 19 HP, but then immediately
he gets swatted back down.
Yeah.
And then the Mummy Lord pretty much uses most of its legendary actions and its normal actions to pretty much finish off Tokul. He puts him down to 2 failures, and then when it rolls around to his next legendary action, he just finishes him off. Like, no remorse, no nothing. Do you think that was a valid decision to make? Do you think I was picking on Tokul, or what do you think?
Yeah, well, hearing your thought process, yes, that does make sense. I would have liked to hear, like, maybe you kind of inform the party, like, you know, this guy is an undead. He has a particular, you get the sense that he has a particular distaste for
oh yeah, I definitely said that.
Holy people.
Yeah, I said that.
Alright, I had a real issue, like, listening to people. Like, I didn't hear Lachlan's order for the thing, and then, like, I didn't hear that stuff. Okay, that's just my bad. That's fine. You said that, that's okay. You said that, that's okay.
Yeah, there was a particular reason he was focusing down Tokul. And I think that's happening a lot more these days, where enemies are getting, maybe not modern intelligence, not the word, but they're just kind of acting on what they believe is the correct decision, where this person is hurting me a lot, I should probably deal with him, or this person has the potential to hurt me a lot, I am going to deal with him first. Such as the Beholden Ryan or the Mummy Lord and Tokul. I don't know. So do you think that was a fair course?
Yeah, well, rationally, yes. And I'm not saying what you did was wrong. I just think, like, you should also consider that, like, there's also a line between being, like, sticking to, like, realism, like how these characters act, and then, like, having fun. There's definitely a line there that, like, everyone should be aware of.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Yeah, I don't know what. I didn't really get a vibe on what Matt kind of thought about it afterwards. I remember after the session he was like, hey, do I need to make another character?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know, honestly. And I was completely honest where I said, I honestly don't know. Like, you guys have quite a few options in front of you. Anyway, after Tokul dies, the mummy kind of looks to the paralyzed Maple in front of him, who got hit with the dreadful glare. And he kind of stomps up to him, and he kind of like one-hit KOs. Actually, no, he was already low on health. So he just kind of pummels him to unconsciousness, and then he uses one legendary action to put him on 2 failures. And then that is, I believe, he's vulnerable at this point. You guys get rid of all the gargoyles. And right before he takes the legendary action to do 2 failures to Maple, I believe Snow attacks him and does 23 damage with a sneak attack. And I was looking at my, I was looking at the amount of health he had, and he had 24 health. I was like, oh. And I was like, well, that I can't do anything about that. He goes down to literally 1 health, and I just looked at the legendary actions. And I was like, well, this is gonna happen where he just kind of stomps on Maple to just kind of get him within that one teetering moment of life and death, and finally Storm finishes him off with the what's it called? Vicious Mockery, which is just like 2d6 damage or something, 2d4 damage, a pitiful amount of damage. And I think would you say he roleplayed that pretty well? I would say yes, he did.
Yeah, it was quite detailed.
It was less the jokey Ubanian impressionist comedy, and more the insulting, hey, you just killed one of my friends kind of thing, which was, I think, was a good way to go about it.
I almost forgot about the Ubanian comedy bit. Actually, I quite like that as well. Like, Ryan couldn't, like, keep himself together while Storm does these samey, really brain-dead impressions. I think that was so funny because we set up Ubanians to be these ultra-human purists, and, like, Ryan was raised up in that sort of culture, so you just can't help at laughing at all the racist jokes that Storm is making.
Which aren't even particularly racist. They're just like really shitty impressions. Oh man, you being.
Oh, I think it is racist because basically what I'm gathering from that joke is that all impressions look the same or similar because all the races other than human are like. They're all like savages, you know. They all fall into the same bin.
I can kind of see that, yeah. Yeah, I can kind of see how that makes sense.
Anyway, put a comment in for the. We're gonna go into comedy theory about Ubanian racist jokes, okay?
And Maple, we have this discussion right as combat ends, right, where it like right after Storm finishes off the Mummy Lord, it is Maple's turn. But combat ends right as he finishes the Mummy Lord. So we had the discussion where, is Ryan able to run up to Maple in that time before he makes his death saving throw and feed him a potion? And honestly, I was kind of confused about this too. And we had, I'd say, a rather length, like 5 minutes of just talking about like, well, what do we do in this situation? And Ryan or Aiden, and I'm not sure Lewis was also arguing that, well, combat's over, so we should just be able to feed it to him. And then Lachlan was like, well, technically it's my turn next. And it's within 6 seconds, and everything kind of happens simultaneously, so I should do my death saving throws. And honestly, I was kind of leaning both ways. Do you know which way you were leaning?
There isn't. I mean, there isn't. There are some times where like the turn order still continues for whatever reason, and most of the time it doesn't. So I was kind of. And I know the turn order like continues on for like a specific reason. It's always for like a specific reason. Where if there wasn't a reason to do that, then you know combat would be over for real. Like that, like no more turns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm more party biased, so I would have said that combat would have been over. It would have been over. It was wrong for Lachlan to argue that. Okay, you're arguing for your own life. Okay, have some more respect for your own life. You know, anyway, but that's what I was leaning to more. You know, combat's over. You know, we can move now.
I liked what Lachlan said. I liked it a lot. I was like, bless this man for his
curse you
and
curse you. Okay,
genuineness.
You're gonna regret that next time. Next time you say that, I'll kill you myself.
The old Tokul. And so he does his final death saving throw, right? And he fails.
No, he survives.
No, he fails. And then
he survives.
we say, and then I think someone says, you have inspiration, don't you?
Oh, that's right. Yes, that's right. And then he lives.
And then he rolls it again, and then he gets over. And now, inspiration isn't actually supposed to work like that. You're supposed to say, I use inspiration before you do the roll, I'm pretty sure.
And you get advantage, right?
Yeah.
You get advantage, yeah.
But I honestly think I like inspiration working more this way. Do you agree with that?
I always forget about inspiration, so I kind of have no opinion because I always forget to use it. But I mean, whatever you want, whatever you want. You want it to work like luck? I'm not gonna say no. I'm not gonna say no.
Hey, hey, are you saying that just because it's clearly biased towards the player?
No, I mean yes, but no. Yes, but
I think
actually
I like
no.
it this way. It's like
Okay, it's like
yeah.
that then.
Yeah, the
You
way I
can't
see
take-
it is, it's
you can't
like
take
it's
back.
kind of like fate, right? Where you're kind of fighting fate, where it's like, fuck you, I got inspiration, let me try this again, kind of thing. And I think it especially works really well in this situation where he clearly, like, the fates had it that he was gonna die here, but like he built up this karma up until this point where he's like, you know what, let me do that again, and he comes out of it barely, but with that one success. And Ryan's able to race up to him in time and feed him the potion and bring him out of death's throes, and that's where the session ends. I believe you see the ashes of the Mummy Lord kind of float up into the air, and you see them get kind of pulled into the ground itself, alluding to a deeper basement level of this place, and that maybe the Mummy Lord isn't dead yet or something along those lines. And I believe we end the session there. Is that
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Okay, so the session ends, and there's like this emotional moment, or kind of very briefly, where Snow runs over to Tokal, and I know we were like hitting like the late hours. I think it was just
It's like
ticking
10 past 12. Yeah.
Yeah, it was ticking past. I would have liked at least like just a couple minutes for like the emotion to sink because they were fresh.
I wanted to save it. I wanted to save it. I know
No, I think no, but this is where I disagree. I know you want to save it, but I like the emotions were fresh then. I just wanted a couple minutes. That's where I just wanted a couple minutes.
I know exactly where you were going, where you were cradling his head between your arms, and it was going to be emotional, and I was like, no, save it. Save it. This is good shit for next session, where everybody is fresh, and they can all roleplay to the best of their abilities. And I will strive to do my best to make it as emotional as it was, as fresh as it was when he died. Don't worry.
No, I worry. I will worry.
No,
I will worry.
No.
I will worry.
Man, I think I
worried
have
right
to
now.
write more of these like fucking these afterlife visions because you guys are dying more often than I expected.
That's
So, I
what I'm
don't know.
saying. You're gonna have to write like 5 of them in after one session because it's gonna be a TPK. You know?
Oh right, we can talk about
TPK.
that now. Do you think combat is harder these days?
Oh, yeah.
Like a lot? Or do you think you guys just aren't good enough at combat?
I think it's a bit of both, really. It's a bit of both. Even though I think for this one we're actually pretty strategically sound. It was just kind of the rough rolls. It always seems to come down to the rolls at the end of the day because D&D, based on dice, roll the math rocks. So yes, it's both.
Okay. Would you prefer that combat get toned down in difficulty? What did you say?
I think I'm actually leaning towards yes because I don't know because I vividly remember me saying that like I wish combat was more deadly. But now I'm like maybe that wasn't
That's too deadly.
maybe that wasn't the right, like I didn't have the right, like I didn't know. Maybe I was like too naive in saying that. I don't know. I wish combat wasn't as long, but that's not up to me.
Yeah, that ain't it. As far as rules go, the Mummy Lord is a deadly challenge to a party of 5 level 10 players. I actually went back and I was like, okay, I'm going to tone it down a bit from the Beholder fight, which was also actually technically within deadly standards, and see if I can find something that is less deadly than, say, a ancient blue dragon. And this is kind of where it kind of fell to. I always wanted to use a Mummy Lord at some point, and this was the opportunity. But deadly, I think what made it harder was obviously the switches and the additional mechanics and the gargoyles, but I don't know if it really warranted a character death, and that's kind of also on me because the Mummy Lord did obviously focus down Tokul.
Yeah, that's another aspect. Like, I was slightly frustrated, and I think in a narrative sense, it's just like somebody died because we decided to do this random puzzle in this guy's house. We're never here to fight anything. We just came here to talk about Sivkis to do another thing. So I was like, damn, that like it cost a life because, you know, the party made a decision. And I'm saying the party because Snow was involved as well. Like, even though I said I didn't really want to do it, I did end up doing it with them. So it is partly my fault. It is partly my fault.
Part of the leader needs to take responsibility.
Yeah.
You know how it be. I don't know. I think it's kind of par for the course that you guys walk into a Lich's mansion and not expect someone to die. There's gonna be some cost to it, and there's obviously gonna be if you guys, well, I can't really spoil anything in the next one, but if you guys meet the Lich in a further session where he's gonna poke fun at you for being like, you really expected to have a meeting with me and not something terrible to happen to you guys, like, come on.
Hey, what did we do to you? What did we do to you?
He's a Lich. He's just evil. Some beings are just terribly evil.
Just terribly evil without any sort of motivation?
Yes. Like orcs in Lord of the Rings.
Good segue. So, we recently read this article. Forget the guy's name. I think his name is James Mendez Hodes.
Yes, I believe so.
He is a cultural consultant. So, like, kind of like a sensitivity... what are they called? Sensitivity consultant? And I think what they do is, like, they make sure that you're not being offensive. Basically. You're not accidentally being offensive to certain people. You know?
Yeah.
When you don't intend to.
I feel like an old man sometimes, where I'm like, that just sounds like a really silly job, and it should just kind of come down to common sense. But maybe that is kind of needed these days. I don't know. We're getting a little political here, but this is where it's going.
At first I thought, like, that kind of sounds like a stupid job, but thinking now, it can be easy to offend people when you don't mean to. It can be easy to offend people. So, yeah, I don't know. Not gonna judge him for being that. It's people pay him for that. Obviously, there is some value in that. So,
yeah.
Anyway,
do you want to continue summarize what his article is about?
Yes, I will summarize again. Before the podcast, I summarized it for Albert because he read it 3 weeks ago, and I just read it today. So I will summarize again.
You fresh.
I might need to bring up the thing here. Forgive me for the clicks.
We will link the article in the description below. So leave a like, comment, subscribe, please.
It is a lengthy. It's quite a lengthy read. So Tokul, avert your eyes. Okay, so he starts off. He basically says that Tolkien, in one of his letters, based the orcs off a European perspective of the Mongols. You know, back in like the Middle Ages and stuff like that, when there used to be like this big empire.
Yep.
And he says, and I'll read the letter to you, or the extract from the letter. Tolkien writes, "The orcs are definitely stated to be corruptions of the human form seen in elves and men. They are, brackets, or were, squat, broad, flat-nosed, sallow-skinned, with wide mouths and slant eyes. In fact, degraded and repulsive versions of the, brackets, to Europeans, close brackets, least lovely Mongol types." So that's what he says. So, there's no doubt that Tolkien did base the orcs off a real-life race. And orcs in Middle-earth are classically evil. They're evil because their backstory is that Melkor, he's like the evil kind of Lucifer god in Lord of the Rings, took a bunch of elves, Like he tricked a bunch of elves, I think, and then he corrupted them. And he basically abused these elves, like put them in slavery and abused them until like they turned into something else. And if you've ever played Skyrim, that's kind of like what the Falmer are. You know those pale, gross goblin
elves.
Yeah, underground elves. It's kind of what they are, right? And they get corrupted, and now the orcs are now like, oh, we hate the elves because they think they're so beautiful with their white skin and their pale hair and connection to nature and whatever. And they're supposed to be like the antithesis to everything that is good in Lord of the Rings. So that's what he starts off with. And then he goes into more context about like the Scourge of the Yellow Peril, which was, I think, a slogan from World War I propaganda. Or was it World War II? Or maybe it was before even that. Maybe it was like an anti-immigration type thing. I can't remember now.
I think it's been used many times.
And that stereotype was basically came from this whole like Mongol terror that came before when Tolkien was born. I think he was born in 1892, so long time ago. And then he basically says that, like, you know, the Mongols weren't that bad. I mean, they never tried to stamp out any cultures that they conquered. They integrated all the religions that they had. Like he said that Chigis Khagan, which I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the actual name for Genghis Khan.
I think it was just another name for him.
Yeah. And he said that he followed a bunch of religions. He followed like Christianity, who his mother followed, and like another religion at the same time. So it was kind of, you could tell, and they always wanted to like learn more about other people's things, other people's cultures and religions and like that. And then he makes comparisons to like the British Empire and how like they tried to colonize India and keep India, like they used India's culture against them, and like they tried to like keep them separated so they would never rise up against them. And then like on another side of things, they tried to like also stamp out the culture and replace it with their own. So basically saying Mongols, no culture war. British Empire, culture war. That's what he was saying there. And then he goes on to say that the common fact that like a lot of people today can trace their lineage back to Chigis Khagan, and that he does admit that the Mongol Empire did have a rape culture. So he doesn't deny that. At least I don't think he doesn't.
Yeah.
And then he talks again about how Tolkien was influenced about his participation in World War I. I think he was a lineman in World War I and fought in France, I think, something like that. And he talks about like the propaganda they use, like referring to like the Austrian-Hungarians as the Huns, or I think it was the Germans or something like that. And it goes into like scientific racism. So this is mostly just context, right? There's actually two parts to this article, but this is just the first part. And I don't think we read the second part because the second part is just as long. And
there's a lot of it.
We actually wanted to talk about this like what 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But then I forget to read it, and then like we had like guests on, and then we would forget to talk about it. And then just now I remembered to read it, and now we're talking about it. We're not getting sidetracked for once.
Yes, sir.
But anyway,
I don't remember anything about it. So would you say the crux of it is that Tolkien based orcs off the Mongol, what Europeans saw of the Mongols at the time? And I believe what the person who wrote the article says, that people who play D&D, which if you don't know, D&D is kind of based off, well, a lot of fantasy is based off Tolkien's interpretation of it, or since he's what a lot of people call the grandfather of fantasy, right? Mm-hmm. That people who play D&D, they kind of foster or encourage the kind of racist undertones that kind of, I don't know, that they're innate in the fantasy genre, like that orcs are always evil, and that just kind of perpetuates the racist undertones of that.
Let's bring it back a little bit, because I think that goes into like the second half of this 2-part article, which we didn't read. So I actually can't say if that's what he's saying for sure.
Well, at the end of this article, he kind of goes through it.
Okay. I'll have to cut this out. behind
Huh?
under racist. I think, but for the main meat of this article, I think he's not trying to prove that Tolkien modeled the orcs after the Mongols, because Tolkien basically admitted that in that letter. But I think he was trying to say or he was trying to prove if Tolkien's intent for modeling the orcs after the Mongols was he racially biased against the Mongols because of and he gives a lot of context about Tolkien grew up during World War One. There was a lot of propaganda, and he grew up in the British Empire where that sort of stuff was kind of rife and normalized at the time. And I think anyone who grows up in that sort of environment will inadvertently soak in some of the biases that their society holds.
Yep.
I mean, that's just sort of something that just happens. It happens to everyone. It happens to us because we live in Australia. We hold certain Australian values. Not that we necessarily chose those values, but it's just what we know. We've grown up with this stuff we soak it in like a sponge, and it just comes out, and we don't even know we have these sort of biases. We just think that that's normal. So I think, was Tolkien a racist? I don't know. Was he a racist by accident? Probably yes. But I don't know if he was intentionally racist. I don't think he was some sort of race theorist and he's saying white people are the superior race or something like that. There's definitely parts in his work that allude to that. But is that intentional? I don't know.
I don't think. Yeah, I'm not sure he was trying to perpetuate the racism. It was just kind of this ignorance that a lot of people had, 120 years ago, right? People weren't as well informed back then, so they just kind of unknowingly perpetuated the racist stereotypes at the time.
And I think it definitely, it's just a culture thing. A lot of people say fantasy in general is too centered around authors who are just old white guys. And I watched an interview with George R. R. Martin, who is in fact an old white guy, author of Song and Ice and Fire series. But he said that the reason why it's centered around that because people buy books like that. That's what sells. And if people buy books from, colored people who aren't old white guys, then it could change. And he says it is changing. Nowadays it is changing. But, these old white guys probably grew up in a time where racism was an okay thing to be. Being a racist was okay because everyone was a racist. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think it's more the nurture side rather than the nature side of things in Tolkien's case. But I don't know. Tolkien may be a racist. I have to do more reading on that.
Okay.
But based off this article by itself, it's hard to say. He gives a lot of evidence why Tolkien may be a racist, but was he actually a racist? Don't know.
Okay. What I kind of gather from this guy's point of view, he takes the letter you mentioned earlier, the excerpt of one of his letters where Tolkien himself states that he bases orcs off Mongols, and he kind of extends on that a lot later on in his article, where he talks about how you said that orcs are just corrupted versions of elves, and if you transfer that into kind of real life, how orcs are kind of mongoloids or people of black people who are degenerate or corrupt versions of white people. And I don't know, I feel like he reads way too much into it. I don't know, what do you think?
It's hard because that just goes back to what was the intent behind it, right? And Actually, now that I just kind of reread like his last paragraph there, or his last few lines there, and I think what he's trying to what he's trying to do is kind of like say, hey, look, these sort of things were based on these kind of racial ideas that Tolkien may have developed during his upbringing and, you know, the surrounding culture that he was in, and he's, at least in the end of this paragraph, he's saying that, like, you know, obviously, I'm not saying you're a racist if you like these sort of things, but he's more worried about people who are actually intentionally racist engaging on this sort of thing and using it as a vehicle to propel their racism.
Anecdotally, I don't know if I've ever met anybody like that. I'm not sure if it's more prevalent in like America or other like communities, but I have never met anybody who used D&D or fantasy in general to kind of perpetuate their ideas of like racism or sexism. Have you ever met anybody like that?
No, but not that I can remember. No, but there are. I don't know. Maybe he's trying. I think maybe he's actually trying to say, like, you know, you shouldn't like them because there's got racial undertones. But he's just saying, like, hey, you should be aware that, like, you shouldn't really, like, soak in, like. He's saying, like, what am I trying to say? He's saying, like, on a subconscious level, this thing can be harmful, right? Because, you know, dark versus light, you know, dark representing evil and light. And I think, you know, there's like these tests that you can do to check your internal racist bias. So not
unconscious bias.
Yeah, something like that, where like stuff that's in your mind before your, you know, the front of your brain filters it out, right? And he's saying, like, I think it's along that sort of vein, right? Like, you may not think that it's racist, or you may not have racial values and, you know, going into this sort of stuff, but like, just be careful about the sort of the under the surface stuff that this stuff could represent, right? And just saying, like, because you might end up being a racist when you don't even know it, just because this is the sort of stuff that you grew up on. You don't know any better. You just think that this is normal. That's what I think. I don't know if he's like accusing people of anything. I just feel like he's trying to warn people. But yes, some of it does seem like, yeah, you're looking a little too far into it. A lot of people just view this as just a cool thing that they like a TV show or, you know, a video game. So people don't like GTA because they're serial killers, or they like to rob hookers or whatever. They just like it because it's fun and it's not supposed to be taken too seriously, right?
Yeah. It's more about intent at the end of the day, right? Like, I don't go into D&D like, I'm gonna be racist as fuck and orcs are all evil and all that kind of shit. Like, that just kind of comes with the setting itself. And I think what he's trying to get at is that the setting itself is inherently racist, right? In one of his lines, if I'm gonna paraphrase him, he talks about how designing a fantasy universe based on racist theories whose purpose is to uphold acts of violence and dehumanization towards an exaggerated intentional stand in for my family is not okay. His whole point is that D&D, or not D&D, just the fantasy setting in general is just inherently racist, and he's saying that, like, as much as we say like Asians are good at math and shit, it may be like this kind of unseemingly harmless stereotype, but he's saying that it just because it's harmless doesn't mean it's not wrong, right? I don't know. There's so many points I agree with him on, and there's so many points I think he's fucking crazy to even say. There's a lot of points I disagree with this guy.
So what specifically do you disagree with?
Okay. I think he likes to exaggerate a lot. He takes this letter and he builds upon it so many points that it's just overloading it, where it's just, you can't construe this much and exaggerate from one fucking sentence, right? He talks about, like his final conclusion, a little bit before his final conclusion, he says, and I quote, because I think Tolkien's own words in the previous section made his intent pretty clear. He's telling a story about good and evil, where good is explicitly identified with England, evil is explicitly identified with Asians. And the means for communicating these concepts is a catalogue of classic racism. It's like he's trying to make the whole thing about racism just because it kind of fits his kind of bias here or his purpose. And I half-heartedly disagree with that. I don't know.
No,
I just think
I think you're onto something there, because Tolkien, and I don't know if you know this about Tolkien, he hates any sort of allegory or any sort of like, political or racial undertones being linked to the Lord of the Rings. Like, people always ask him, oh, is Lord of the Rings like an allegory for your experience with World War One? And he says, no, it's not. I'm just trying to make a kind of mythical story, because all the quote-unquote English myths are actually based on like French mythology. It's just stuff that England borrowed from other countries, and he was trying to like go for something that was like inherently English, right? So I think on that point that you pointed out, that he says like, England is the light and Mongols are the dark, it's just straight up wrong, because Tolkien himself said that was never his intent, at least in that aspect. Like, he never wanted to attach any allegory. He never wanted this to be interpreted to something that was related to real life. He wanted the work to stand alone by itself, as its own world, as his interpretation of what a purely English mythos would be about.
Yeah, I think
so. Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Hodes is just trying to kind of find
Mendes
meaning
Hodes.
in. Oh, my bad. Mr. Mendes Hodes is just trying to find meaning in something where there really isn't. Like, he's just trying to blow things out of proportion. At least from where I'm standing, it kind of seems like that. Maybe there is legitimacy to his claims, but honestly, from where I'm standing, I really can't see it that way. Like, I've never looked at like an orc and thought, oh yeah, that's like Asian people or like black people or anything like that. No, there's never been like a connection between the two races, like, ever for me. I'm not sure if it's the same for you.
No, but I think, yeah, but there's also like another side of the argument, which I think Wizards of the Coast is addressing in terms of D&D itself, where orcs are like purely evil, this sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
And they're saying like, and people were like, that's probably not something you should purport, like a race that is born evil, right? Because that sends kind of a bad message.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of disagree with that too. Because we're going back to Tolkien's universe, right? Like, it's very black and white, right? Like, orcs are inherently evil. There's no redeeming factor about these guys. The whole purpose is like just evil and chaos. All they do is murder and rape and pillage and all that stuff, right? Has there ever been like a good orc in like Tolkien's universe?
No, but they're specifically being corrupted by an evil god. Even the god wasn't necessarily evil, he was more jealous. Because how the story goes is, this guy was kind of like this loner edgelord who, much like comparisons to Satan, he was Lucifer. He was like, if there was ever a guy who was God's right hand, like, he was just underneath God and better than all the angels, it was this guy. He was called Melkor, right? And this guy got jealous of God because, or Eru Ilúvatar in Lord of the Rings, he got jealous of them because he could make all these like great races like men, elves, and the other gods could make dwarves and ents and all this stuff. He wanted something of his own, but he couldn't make something of his own because he didn't have the power to do that. He had everything else except that. So he decided to steal from them, and they were made out of evil, right? Whereas in D&D, it is certainly inspired by that, but not necessarily. It's not necessarily the same.
Necessarily the same, yeah.
Right? These orcs are supposedly, and their origins can differ, where you look at and which DM you talk to. I feel like if they were a natural race of the world, then no, they shouldn't be inherently evil. But if they were corrupted by this jealous god who wanted to make his own thing, but, you know, decided to fuck it up and make it like a big middle finger to all the other gods' races, then yes, maybe it is justified that they're purely evil because they were made that way. You kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get where you're going from that aspect. My question is, it's so wrong to have a race that is just inherently evil? Is that
I think,
wrong?
I don't know if that is necessarily, I would say probably, if you're trying to reflect real life, then yes, it's
Obviously,
wrong.
yes. In a fantasy
Yes, it's
setting.
wrong. But fantasy can also be a reflection of real life. But I don't know. I feel like I'm always a guy who likes more gray stuff because I feel like that's more engaging. Having more black and white stuff, it feels boring to me and unrealistic. But if you're not trying to go for that, then I don't know. I don't think it's really that right to do that. Like I think Tolkien tries to justify it because of the way that they were created. But if you were just making this race as evil just because, the lack of justification makes it feel a bit iffy to me. I would never make a race just that's purely evil.
Yeah, so you're saying it's morally wrong.
Yes,
if a race
I would say I'd say it's morally wrong, right?
Okay.
If you don't bother to justify it in like a meaningful way, then yes, it's probably morally wrong. I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna say it's morally wrong.
Okay. I kind of sit on the fence between the whole morally grey aspect and just the evil versus good kind of thing, because I think that's kind of like the allure of the setting, right? Like in Lord of the Rings, there's never been like a moral dilemma where like maybe we shouldn't throw the ring into the fire, like these people have lives kind of thing. It's always been like the goal has always been clear from the start. Like it's obviously like there's the good guys and there's bad guys, right? There's never been like a middle between, right? Where there's like some kind of weird moral decision. That's kind of like the allure of it, where there's something that doesn't exist in real life. It's fantasy.
Well,
That's
there
kinda
is.
what gets me.
There is actually,
Okay.
because it's again we're going to have to talk about races again, but it's about how the races were actually made, right? That's why there's kind of like a more good side versus evil side. There's like the elves, and they're super into nature, and like everything that they do is about nature, right? And they care about magic, and they're scared that the world is dying, which it is when Lord of the Rings takes place. And hobbits and hobbits kind of like are an offshoot of man. They kind of don't really have any more obligations. They just kind of keep to themselves, and like they want to be happy not doing much. They just want to eat and have fun and smoke weed and all this sort of stuff. And orcs were made to be specifically bad, right? And dwarves were made to be specifically these pragmatic people who dig rocks, and they like gold, and they're very work centric. They were made that way. And ants, you could go on. But men are the only race that aren't attached to this whole like they're supposed to be one thing, right? Men were kind of like, they have shorter lives, but they're not, they can be easily influenced either way, because the ring race, there's 9 ring race in, I'm getting real deep into this Lord of the Rings lore.
Yeah, let's keep going.
But
Keep it
there
up.
are 9, so basically, do I really have to explain this? I do. Okay, so basically, I think Sauron gets Celebrimbor, who's an elfsmith, to make a bunch of rings, alright? And he uses these rings to try and corrupt the leaders of each race. So he tries to corrupt dwarves, he tries to corrupt elves, and he tries to corrupt humans. The dwarves and the elves, it doesn't work on them, because dwarves, they don't really care too much. Like, they just want to mine, and they want to do all this dwarf stereotype shit. And elves, they're in tune with magic, so the focus is, what the rings do, they try to focus Sauron's influence onto them, and that doesn't work for them either, because their attunement to magic kind of it kind of negates that. But humans, on the other hand, think like Boromir. He was easily influenced by the rings allure, and he was a man. And the 9 ring race were, you guessed it, they were 9 human kings, and they were easily corrupted by the ring's power, because something about humans made them ambitious. They always wanted more, or they were always swayed to one way or another. They were very pliable, because that's how they were made. They were given this gift of free will that allowed them to be whoever they wanted to be, just at the cost of their lifespan, which was only like 100 years or so. So they were specifically made that way. Elves were specifically made one way. Dwarves were specifically made another way. Orcs were made to be evil. It's all explained. Tolkien doesn't have this black and white thing just because he wanted there to be a black and white thing. There was always a reason why these guys were more inclined to be good and these guys were more inclined to be bad or were good, that sort of thing. He made them that way specifically, and he justified it because the gods made them that way.
Okay. That doesn't really change the fact that it's black versus white, good versus evil, though, does it?
Yeah,
just because there's a justification behind it doesn't mean that it's not the case.
What do you mean it's not the case?
So what I'm saying is that in Tolkien's universe, the boundary between good and evil is very.
Oh, I'm not saying that's not the case, but I'm saying that he doesn't just do it just because, right? He does it for a reason. Everything has a reason in the Tolkien universe. At least I think it does.
Yeah.
And it's a good reason. It's a good reason, right? He's not trying to say that the elves are good because, you know, they're pretty and white and have fair skin. They're good because they're made that way. They were made to represent something. Well, they're not made to represent anything, but they were made to be connected to something. And orcs were made to be ugly, and because they're corrupted, they're this the stolen race of elves, and that's all I'm saying. I'm saying it's mostly like it. He made that way out of a reason. He had a reason to do it that way. He didn't do it because of no reason, because there had to be a good guy and a bad guy in every story.
I'm not sure if I agree with that, because the whole premise is just good versus evil, right? Like on a very basic fundamental level.
Yes, if you want to break it down that way, yes, it is.
Yeah, and it's never called into question whether what a character is doing something that is morally correct or incorrect.
Okay, but what's your point though?
That there's nothing wrong with having a black and white story.
No, there isn't, because there's stuff like that all over the place. I'm not saying it's not wrong. Is that what you're trying?
You did say that it is morally wrong to have a black and white.
I said it is more. Yes.
Inherently evil.
Without justification. That's what I said.
Okay.
And I think you were trying to say, well, Tolkien had orcs that were evil. I'm saying there was a reason that they were evil.
Is there...
It wasn't necessarily because they're evil because they're ugly and look like Mongols. They're evil because of this other reason. Somebody made them that way.
Someone in universe which he created.
Yeah.
I don't... This is getting deep. Hold on, let me think about this for a second. It's wonderful content. Just silence.
But people are basing their opinions off real life, right? Everything is based off real life. Even the Lord of the Rings is somewhat based off of real life. Well, I mean, it definitely has inspirations from real life, right? So in real life, no race is evil. You know, there are evil people because something happened. Like, I don't know, there's psychopaths are born because their brains were wired differently.
We're getting too deep here.
But you're saying purely in a fantasy world, not based in reality, then yes, you can have a good guy and an evil guy. It happens all the time.
Yeah, and is that morally wrong? It's not. Well, you're saying it's not morally wrong as long as there's a good reason behind it.
Yeah, and I guess that is also a slippery slope. Like, I think in universe, Tolkien doesn't make it about, like, it's not like a racial thing. He wasn't trying to make a comparison to racial things. It's just something that happened in the world. If you're making a race that's evil because you're basing it off like Asians or black people or, you know, God forbid, white people, as some more liberal people are doing now, like kind of demonizing the white person, which I think is, you're just doing the same thing, just the person that you're targeting is a different color.
Okay.
I'm not really sure what like you're trying to argue. You're saying that it's not morally wrong to make an entire, like there's nothing wrong with making a race
I'm saying
entirely.
there's nothing wrong in the fantasy world to make a race that is inherently evil.
Why is that?
Why not? It's a fantasy race and I'm not basing it off any human race or anything. I just think that there should be, or that there's no reason not to have a race that is just, from our standpoint, from the standpoint of good and evil, that is inherently evil. That takes joy in, I don't know, like murdering people or raping and pillaging or whatnot. Whether it be orcs or whatever other evil races you have out there.
So purely fantasy, you know, not basing in any sort of reality whatsoever, it's okay to have a race that's pure evil.
Absolutely.
But everything's based in real life. You're never not going to take anything from real life.
No. This has nothing to do with the whole point of fantasy is that things that can't occur in real life are occurring in this fictional setting.
But it has a basis in reality. It all comes from somewhere in reality.
No. Okay. So let's say the orcs are inherently evil, right?
Yeah.
And I'm taking that from the inspiration from, say, Tolkien's universe, and perhaps he based that off on some races or in real life or whatnot. Say the Mongols, as Mr. Mendes Hodes so interprets, right?
Yeah.
Just because I'm taking inspiration from that doesn't mean that if I were to create a new race, would that also be based on real life, even though I'm not taking it from, say, the Mongols or black people or white people or Asian people or anything? Is that racist?
So are you taking inspiration from Tolkien's orcs, but you're just calling the race a different thing?
I'm making a race that is inherently evil, and I believe that Tolkien's orcs are also inherently evil.
Yeah. I think it depends on like the justification on that. Are they just evil because they're evil?
They're evil because they're born evil.
Okay.
Because
what you're getting at, I think, goes against what a lot of just how people think in general, right? That's a discussion for like that people in real life fight about, and like you think about like people in real life say like, is it in someone's nature to be evil, you know, if they like turn out to be a psychopath or a serial killer, or is it how they're raised?
This isn't based on real life. It's not nature versus nurture.
I get what you're saying, but if you put it that way and say they're evil because they're evil, people aren't gonna say, oh, they're not gonna just accept that, because they have their own way of thinking.
Okay, so but if I were to say they're evil because a god made them evil, that would suddenly be okay?
I mean, it's a justification, yeah.
And that's no different from me saying they're evil because they're born evil?
I don't know. Like, I'm like really wigged out now, but I think that making a race evil because they're evil. So this is the thing that I think he's trying to get to, right? Like, this thing, like making things evil because they're evil, comes from a place that is possibly of a racist origin. That's the thing. You might not think it's wrong, but it is wrong, right? If you really trace it back to where it's going, and you might not have any intentions of it being wrong morally, like it's like supposed to be some sort of racist comparison, but he's saying that even though you say it's not wrong, and even though it's like not based on anything, but in reality you are tracing it back from something, like i.e. Tolkien's orcs, then yes, it is wrong.
I disagree. I heavily disagree with that. I believe intention behind things is much more important than the origin.
No, I'm just saying that's what this guy is saying. I
heavily disagree with what he's saying.
Let me think.
Okay.
You know what? I'll say this. Actually, I kind of agree. If you want to make a race that's entirely evil in a purely fantasy setting, that, you know, has no relation to real life, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It happens all the time. It's just something that I wouldn't do. So it's just based on preference to me. Okay, I'm not saying they're wrong. It's because it's a character that you made up in a fantasy world, and there's characters of almost anything in make believe, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. I had to think through that a little bit, because if you take the context of this guy, then yes, he's saying it's wrong, but if you're just trying to, it's really complicated. Hey, get in the comments. Hey, you rat bastards. Are you still listening?
Hey, you want part 2 of this? Get in the comments. We'll talk about it some more. I don't know. Are we racist for playing D&D?
No.
Do we perpetuate racism by playing D&D?
No. No. Is he really accusing everyone that plays D&D as being a racist? We have to keep reading. I don't think that's what he's saying. I think he's making a very nuanced argument that can be easily misinterpreted. It might be like he's arguing for a very narrow audience, and I think it's just hard to understand what he's actually trying to say, because the way he's saying it makes it seem like he's trying to argue one way when he's actually trying to like bring up context to say, hey, be careful, or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. He based his argument on one very small thing, and that just doesn't hold grounds as a foundation for a good argument, at least from my perspective. I don't know.
I think he's saying. I just think he's saying it. That's there is a lot of like. He's saying that what Tolkien wrote is very founded in like the world that he grew up in, like the actual culture that he grew up in, and he's saying just be careful, because, you know, it's kind of like a PSA. Just be careful. This thing is based, it's possibly, or he's saying it is, but I'm saying, you know, possibly, because I don't know. Based on the thing, it's more of a warning rather than like a condemnation.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll come back to this in a future podcast, and we'll do some more research, and we'll come back more educated, and we'll also discuss, because I think this can go a lot deeper, and I am very happy to have my mind changed on my own opinions. Well, that's just what I think.
Did you change your mind on what?
No, I did not. My mind has not changed. But if we do some more research, maybe it will, or if someone says something that changes my mind. But so far, I am not convinced that D&D perpetuates any kind of racism, or just because.
I agree.
Just because the genre was kind of based around that doesn't mean that these days people who enjoy the genre or create stuff within the genre perpetuate the idea of racism itself. Anyway,
I agree.
That's what I think. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think. Should we call it there? This is kind of a long one.
How long is it? My screen went asleep. It is
2 hours and 11 minutes.
2 hours and 11 minutes. All right.
Hey, we'll catch you guys next time on episode 22. We're gonna use. Can we use like
what?
a really
22?
clickbait? Yeah, because right now this one's 21.
No, it's 20.
No, it's 21.
No, it's 20.
No, last one was 20.
No. Last time was 19.
Check the VODs.
No, okay,
I'd already checked YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
I try to get you.
No, you can't get me. Can we use like a super clickbait title like "Is D&D racist?" with like full caps? Come on.
No, because
why not?
No, I'm not gonna do that. That is to me the most morally wrong thing you could do.
How
even worse than make.
Let's get
even
some
worse.
clicks.
Even worse than just making a race evil.
Let's clickbait some idiots.
Is the deepest sin. You'll go to the deepest levels of hell.
Give me them views. I'll trade
Anyway,
myself.
I have editing power, so I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, once it's on YouTube, I can change its title though.
I'll just change it back.
Just come on. Is
D&D
racist? The full caps, exclamation mark, Question mark. Is D&D racist?
The reason why
no, better yet,
What?
D&D is racist! Exclamation mark.
Oh my god. That's even worse because that's not even your opinion.
It's so good. Oh, it's so good.
The only reason, because if that actually like takes off, people will like, they're just talking about some bullshit campaign at the start of it, but the real meat is like halfway through. Everyone, check out these two morons. These guys are racist. I don't know. They might misconstrue it that way.
Yeah, let him.
I don't want to be labeled racist.
Give me that controversy clicks. Yeah.
All right, you want to do it? You edit it.
Hey, no.
Yeah.
There's too many cuts in this one.
I have editing power.
Hey, I didn't need to pee in the middle of this one. You did.
I'm cutting that out. In fact, I'm cutting out your entire voice. It's just gonna be me. Everyone's gonna have to agree with me, okay?
D&D is racist confirmed. We'll catch you guys next time.
Episode 21. Next time, 22.
Bye.
Ta-da!